So I want you to think about your all-time favorite movie for a second.
Oh, yeah. Like the one you've just seen a million times.
Right, exactly. The one where you just quote it without even realizing you're doing it.
Yeah, it just kind of slips into your everyday vocabulary.
Exactly. But what is the actual difference between, a massive box office hit that we all watch for a weekend and a true cultural monolith, like a movie that actually changes the way a billion people speak?
Well, it's really the difference between a movie you just consume and a movie a society uses to process its own collective trauma.
Yes, and that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to our latest deep dive. We are looking at this really fascinating cultural essay from the blog of Paramendra Kumar Begat.
Right, from April 11, 2026.
Yeah, and the piece is titled Barak Face, Dhurandhar and Sholay, and also from Sholay to Dhurandhar, Bollywood's blockbusters as barometers of India's deepest anxieties. So the mission for this deep dive is to explore how two just absolute juggernauts of Bollywood cinema, which are separated by exactly 50 years, by the way, didn't just entertain audiences.
Right, they acted as, like, giant cinematic mirrors to a nation's deepest fears.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because we're talking about the 1975 classic Sholay and this massive recent phenomenon, Dhurandhar, and its sequel. But before we get too deep, we do need to set some ground rules.
Yeah, definitely. Because, the source material touches on some incredibly politically charged themes.
Right.
I mean, for Sholay, we're talking about the 1975 emergency in India. And for Dhurandhar, it's modern geopolitical tensions, cross-border terrorism, intelligence warfare, all of that.
So to be completely clear to you listening, we are looking at this strictly through a cultural and analytical lens. We aren't taking sides on 1970s domestic policy or modern geopolitics.
No, not at all. We are just impartially examining the author's arguments to understand how these historical contexts literally shaped the cinema of their time.
Right. We're looking at the art. So let's start with the current titan in the room. The sheer jaw-dropping scale of the 2025 blockbuster Dhurandhar.
Directed by Aditya Dar.
Yes, Aditya Dar. And of course, its 2026 sequel, Dhurandhar, The Revenge. The source mentions worldwide box office numbers of roughly 1,000 to 1,400 crore rupees.
Which is just a staggering amount of money.
It's massive. And what's really wild is how this was achieved despite all the modern hurdles we have now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
Think about the environment today. We've got day one high-definition piracy
Yeah.
and this endless sea of streaming competition on OTT platforms.
Plus, audience attention spans are just, completely fractured by social media.
Right. Getting anyone to actually leave their house and sit in the theater is hard enough. But Dhurandhar caused this visceral communal reaction.
Yeah, the author describes packed single-screen theaters in smaller towns and metropolitan multiplexes completely selling out miles ahead of time.
And the TikTok duets. People were acting out the monologues online.
So because of all this frenzy, you have industry veterans, including Ramesh Sippy, who actually directed the 1975 classic Sholay, calling Dhurandhar the Sholay of this age.
Which is a massive, massive title to hand out.
And this is where I kind of have to push back a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, sure, the numbers are huge, but isn't comparing a current, basically brand new trend to a 50-year-old legend a bit premature? It feels like comparing a viral internet video with billions of views to, I don't know, a classic novel.
No, that's a completely valid skepticism. And the author of the essay actually acknowledges that. The parallels are super seductive, right?
Right.
You have the massive turnouts, the iconic characters, people watching it 3 or 4 times. But to understand why the author argues Sholay is on another level entirely, you have to look beyond just the box office revenue.
Okay, so what's the metric then?
Footfalls, the actual ticket sales. The author points out that Sholay achieved a market penetration that modern blockbusters almost never replicate. It's estimated that it sold between 10 to 15 crore tickets over the years.
Wait, really? 10 to 15 crore? That's 100 to 150 million tickets.
Yes, in 1975.
Wow. When the population was significantly smaller.
Exactly. That's not just a hit movie. That is a demographic takeover.
Okay, so to understand if Dhurandhar can truly claim this throne 50 years later, we first need to dissect what exactly made Sholay immortal in the first place.
Right, the anatomy of a cultural institution. The author actually compares it to things like Casablanca or Star Wars.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because I want you to imagine watching a movie that literally changes the way your whole country speaks. The essay dives into the lexicon of Sholay.
Oh, the dialogue is legendary.
Yeah, lines like, Kitna nadmi the...
How many men were there?
Right. and "Ya Dusty." These didn't just stay on the screen. The author points out they became everyday speech. They were used in living rooms, at political rallies, in wedding toasts.
It's because those lines perfectly captured human power dynamics or deep emotions. So they became a shorthand for people to use in their real lives.
And it wasn't just the words, it was the music, too. R.D. Berman's compositions.
Yeah, the essay is very clear that Berman didn't just write a score. He created the emotional soundtrack for the 1970s youth.
And then there's the technology side of it. This was a revolutionary leap. Sholay used 70-millimeter stereophonic sound in Hindi cinema for the first time.
Which, we take surround sound completely for granted now.
Yeah, I have a soundbar that does it in my bedroom.
Exactly. But in 1975, walking into a theater and having the sound literally engulf you, it was a sensory experience that demanded total submission.
But, and this is a big but, all of these things, the dialogue, the music, the tech, that's just what helps a movie launch. Right.
As the author synthesizes, there's a difference between a movie that launches and a movie that lands.
Meaning?
Sholay landed on decades of memory and language because it was a perfect cultural moment.
And you really can't have a perfect cultural moment without looking at what the culture was actually going through.
Precisely. And in 1975, the culture was experiencing a massive, massive crisis.
Yeah, the era of the emergency. The author gives this incredibly vivid description of India in the summer of 1975.
The political fog.
Yes. Stifled dissent, silent newspapers. The essay describes a feeling of helplessness, of a society that was just sealed shut.
It was an erosion of trust. The social contract was incredibly fragile.
Yeah.
We had economic strain and at the same time rising crime.
Right. The mythology of the Shambal dacoits, these heavily armed bandits.
The prevailing feeling was this terrifying paradox. The state is incredibly powerful, but the streets are completely unsafe.
So the setting of Sholay, this village called Ramgarh, the author argues that Ramgarh was symbolic India.
Completely abandoned by formal justice. Ruled by fear. Just waiting for a rescue.
It sounds like a superhero origin story, but instead of a person, it's an entire nation looking up at the sky waiting for a savior because the police lines are down.
That is a great analogy.
So how did a curry western serve as mass catharsis for that specific political trauma?
Well, the author meticulously argues that Sholay absorbed all that national anxiety and just fired it back at the audience as a spectacle.
It asked a very dangerous question, didn't it?
It did. It asked, who protects ordinary people when institutions stop feeling real?
Wow.
And the film offered a fantasy of restored order, but an order delivered through righteous violence by individuals, not the state.
So if Sholay answered the deep anxieties of 1975, what exactly is Dhurandhar answering 50 years later?
That's the core of the essay's comparison. The modern era has a completely different set of fears.
Yeah, the new fear isn't local dacoits hiding in ravines. The author calls it terrorism as an ecosystem.
Which is terrifying because it's invisible.
Exactly. It's external infiltration, sleeper agents, proxy warfare. It spans airports, hotels, cyberspace. I want you, the listener, to reflect on that for a second. Think about how your own fears have shifted over your lifetime, from, tangible local fears like a mugging to these invisible networked threats that you can't even see coming.
And that's exactly what Dhurandhar taps into. The plot follows Ranveer Singh, who plays Jaskirat Singh Rangi.
Right, he's an undercover operative for RNAW.
Yeah, India's foreign intelligence agency. He infiltrates Karachi's underworld by using the identity of a Balochi gangster, Hamza Ali Mazari.
So it's incredibly high stakes, and the essay mentions this modern trauma archive that the film draws heavily on to make it feel real to the audience.
Yes, it explicitly references the IC-814 hijacking, the Parlin attack, and the Mumbai 2611 attack.
These aren't just plot devices, they are real, deep national scars.
Exactly, but here is the crucial distinction the author makes between the two films. Sholay was reactive.
Meaning Ramgarh gets attacked and then the heroes respond. They are fixing a problem that already happened.
Right, but Dhurandhar is proactive. It imagines an India that infiltrates, that strikes first, and dismantles the machine before the attack even happens.
It's preemptive justice.
Yes, and that fantasy of preemptive justice is what drives audiences to the theaters today. It creates this feeling of participating in a national event, not just watching an action movie.
Okay, so to truly understand how both of these films process fear, we have to look at the faces of that fear, right?
Villains.
Yes. The villains we deserve, Gabbar versus the network.
The author's comparison here is brilliant. Let's look at Gabbar Singh from Sholay.
The essay calls him a nightmare made flesh.
He was loud, mocking, sadistic. He represented chaos, but with a very human, theatrical face.
He kind of sounds like the Joker, you know?
Yeah.
An agent of pure, personalized chaos. You aren't scared of his spreadsheet, you're scared of his laugh.
That's a perfect connection.
Yeah.
And then you compare that to the villains in Dhurandhar.
Right. The essay points out they are not singular icons. They are nodes in a machine. Handlers, financiers, ideologues.
Their menace is entirely about their infrastructure.
Which sounds like a hostile corporate takeover. So my question is, does a faceless villain make for a less memorable movie? Even if it's a more accurate reflection of our modern fear.
Well, the author would argue that every era gets the villain it deserves.
Oh, I like that.
In 1975, the absolute deepest fear was the breakdown of social order, disorder. So Gabbar was the perfect avatar for that. He was theatrical because the fear was personal.
Right.
But in 2025, the fear is the sophistication of invisible warfare. It's calculated destruction. So while Gabbar became immortal because of his personality, Dhurandhar's villains perfectly encapsulate the dread of coordinated planning.
That makes a lot of sense. A single guy laughing in a desert isn't as scary today as a network of sleeper agents on encrypted phones.
Exactly.
So defeating such terrifying villains requires heroes who are willing to cross the line.
Yeah, the moral ambiguity at the heart of both films.
Let's explore those structural parallels. Because on the surface, a curry western and a spy thriller seem very different.
But underneath, they use the exact same mechanism. Morally ambiguous heroes.
Right. In Sholay, Jai and Viru are literally criminals. They are thieves turned heroes, summoned by Thakur Baldev Singh to do what the law can't.
And in Dhurandhar, Jaskarat or Hamza lives a total double life, using deception and brutality.
Both films send this really dangerous but clearly intoxicating message. Pure goodness is not enough.
Yeah, the essay argues that to defeat evil, one must become strategically ruthless to regain control.
So what does this all mean? Why are audiences so drawn to morally gray heroes, and why does controversy seem to just boost these films? Because both films had major controversies.
Oh, absolutely. Sholay faced censorship from an emergency government that was very uneasy with the idea of vigilantism replacing institutional authority.
They didn't like a movie telling people that the system was broken.
Not at all. And Dhurandhar faces modern criticism for hyper-nationalism, for acting as propaganda, and for its one-dimensional portrayals of Pakistan.
But the controversy doesn't stop people from buying tickets.
Because, as the author brilliantly puts it, controversy is just the shadow cast by cultural relevance.
Oh, wow.
In times of national anxiety, audiences do not want subtlety. They want clarity. They want a clean moral binary and an enemy they can watch lose definitively. Cinema acts as a courtroom where the verdict is never delayed.
A courtroom where the verdict is never delayed? That is incredibly powerful. You get the justice in 2 hours that you might never get in the real world.
Exactly.
Okay, so with all this massive success, the cultural resonance, the controversy, we have to return to the ultimate question the author poses. Will Dhurandhar achieve immortality?
The verdict on immortality.
Yeah, will it last?
Well, the author lays out a very clear thesis on the difference between success and immortality. Dhurandhar definitely has the frenzy.
It has the mass obsession.
Yeah, it's undeniably the film of the moment. It roars just like Sholay did. But it currently lacks the lexicon of dialogue, it lacks the enduring soundtrack, and the shared generational memories.
Right. The real text is, will children in 2040 be quoting its lines? Will scenes from Dhurandhar become shorthand in everyday life?
Right.
But I've got to ask, the media landscape is so wildly fractured now compared to 1975. In 1975, there was one screen in town. Now we have a million OTT platforms, TikTok, just infinite content. Yeah. Is it even mathematically possible for any movie to become cultural DNA today? Is it really a fair fight to compare them?
That's an excellent point, and the author actually synthesizes that in the conclusion. A blockbuster isn't defined just by money or even by its media landscape. It's defined by what it reveals about its audience.
Okay.
Sholay became a legend because, as the essay says, India kept looking back. Dhurandhar has already captured the profound fear of its current era and turned it into fire.
Wow.
Whether it becomes a legend, though, that cannot be predicted. It can only be earned over time.
That is fascinating. What an incredible deep dive this has been. I mean, we went from the dusty, lawless town of Ramgarh in 1975 to the high-stakes, preemptive espionage of 2025 Karachi.
Yeah, and we saw how both films achieved historic status by acting as national mirrors during times of profound unease.
So as we wrap up, I want to ask you, the listener, to think about the pop culture phenomena dominating your world right now.
Yeah. What are the underlying unspoken anxieties that those movies or shows are feeding into?
Exactly. What are they resolving for you? And I want to leave you with one final, truly provocative thought building on everything we talked about today.
Okay.
If Sholay gave a generation the comfort of knowing that individuals could restore order, and Dhurandhar gives a generation the comfort of striking back before they're hit, what will the defining blockbuster of 2075 look like?
That's a great question.
What will be the collective fear that our grandchildren will need to see conquered on the big screen? Think about that next time you go to the movies. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll see you next time.